Anyways, as you guys know, if you've been listening for a while, I'm trying to cover things maybe that are relevant to the Ukraine issue, but maybe aren't always just covering the day to day events because it's constantly changing. And I try once a week to really give my take on what's happening, but that's not going to be today. But I did want to cover something that is kind of fascinating and it's related to Ukraine. I guess we could say it's Ukraine adjacent. And also, it's a good segue into the grain shortage that may be coming in sub Saharan Africa. But, I've talked ad nauseum at this point about how this invasion is kind of forcing countries to backtrack in their environmental progress, push towards more renewable energy, and now we're seeing this same issue in a new light. So, obviously, it's not new news that there are a lot of shortages of food products in Ukraine and Russia, right? Ukraine and Russia are giant breadbaskets in the world. And now countries are starting to have to look for other countries to get them or start producing other materials. Like I talked about Brazil hoping to now be a big exporter of fertilizer, and they're deforesting the Amazon even more to do it. And in this case, I want to look at Iceland, where the country is actually going to start using way more palm oil. And just to refresh everyone before we continue, palm oil is atrocious for the environment. It's just completely awful. EcoWatch does note here that palm oil is among the biggest threats to driving iconic wildlife species like the orangutan to the brink of extinction in Indonesia. Palm oil has become one of the world's leading causes of just rainforest deforestation and destruction in general. And basically, unchecked expansion has pushed palm oil plantations into the heart of some of the world's most culturally and just biologically diverse ecosystems. And, it's not really surprising. And now, this mainly happens in Southeast Asia, but it's really not surprising in all these topics, is that money always seems to trump environmental protection and biodiversity and just protection of our natural resources, right? And I myself really try to never purchase anything with palm oil just because you just see how bad it is. And obviously there's other oils that are bad as well. But it really can be tough sometimes with palm oil because it can be found in everything from ice cream to crackers to laundry detergent. And kind of now going ahead here is that I found an interesting article in the Guardian here that discusses why Iceland is actually going to start using more of this oil again. So the article is called "Iceland Reverts to Palm Oil with Regret as Ukraine War Hits Food Prices." And basically the article discusses how the decision is hard, unpopular, and not what they wanted to do. But it talks about how if supermarkets don't start selling products with palm oil again, they would be empty of providing many staples that people need to live. So it's like, unless they start providing products with palm oil, people may starve or at least not get all the nutrients and all the food they want without having to go somewhere else. And so the article says here in quotes, Iceland will temporarily return to using palm oil in some own label foods from June, because the price of a key alternative, sunflower oil, has soared by 1,000% due to the war in Ukraine, end quotes. And we have to remember here, just for some more context, that Ukraine and Russia are key suppliers of sunflower oil, which, by the way, it's not as bad for the environment, but it's actually really bad for humans. It's not healthy at all. But anyways, sunflower oil is in everything, and many countries need to find alternatives. To put even more context into this, the Black Sea region, so Ukraine, Russia, accounts for about 80% of suppliers of sunflower oil, 80% of the world's supply of sunflower oil. And that's according to analysts in the UK's Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board. So that's a huge, huge hit. Just think that, the ban in the United States on Russian oil only makes up about 3% of U.S. oil, right? Imagine 80% of the world's sunflower oil. That's just kind of hard to fathom if all of a sudden the majority of that is gone, or at least halted from being exported. Apparently in 2018, supermarket chains like Iceland Foods had decided to remove palm oil, and they received a lot of public support, fanfare for doing so, etc. And so that's actually kind of the root of this, is they decided as a nation a lot of these supermarket chains were not going to supply it, which I think is admirable. Obviously it's a smaller country, so that's easier to do, but that's mainly besides the point. I've read that they teamed up with even Greenpeace to do this. They even made some ads. Apparently the ads got taken down because they were a little too activist or something, but Iceland has been on the ban palm oil train for a while. But the larger point here is that this crisis has really made wealthier countries in particular grapple with what is technically right or ethical during a war. Obviously palm oil is atrocious, as I've said, and should be banned, in my opinion. It definitely should be banned. But as inflation gets worse, shortages continue to get worse, it's only, working people and just the general population that's going to suffer. The article also mentions that the boss of a British poultry supplier, which is called Two Sisters, said, in quotes, food price inflation in the UK could reach 15% by the summer, as the overall cost of producing chicken has risen by 50% in a year. The article also says energy costs had risen 400% and packaging by a fifth, while the cost of carbon dioxide, which is used in the slaughter of pigs and poultry as well as the packaging, was up by 350%. So honestly, this is worrying stuff, right? And that's the thing is that, okay, so if you kept banning palm oil, obviously you're still being environmentally savvy, but if there's no alternatives unless you're paying a shit ton for them, who's that going to hurt? You know what I mean? And that's why it gets really, really difficult.